This meeting is being recorded.
All right, we'll go ahead and start. First of all, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, and I know a lot of people here on the Central Coast have a lot of questions as to what's going on in the Middle East right now, and it's concerning for a lot of folks. Let's, I really wanted to get your insight on this because I think you're going to have such a unique insight for our audience. Talk to me just a little bit about. We have seen skirmishes in the past between Hamas and Israel. How does this compare to the ones in the past that you have seen and that you have actually dealt with?
Well, there's no question that a line was crossed with this Hamas attack. This was a horrific terrorist attack. When you have terrorists who are killing randomly innocent men, women, and children, no reason other than the brutality of killing people. There's no question this is one of the most deadly terrorist attacks since 9/11. And Israel clearly has now declared a state of war. I think the likelihood is that they will go into Gaza to go after Hamas and try to make sure that they never do this again. So the chances are that this will be a prolonged war because Gaza is not that easy. It'll be door-to-door fighting. There'll be a lot of casualties. And I hope that Israel tries to define just exactly what its goals are, because that kind of invasion is going to be very difficult and very prolonged.
In your opinion, how much should the United States get involved here to support Israel? Should it get to the point where we actually send boots on the ground, or what would you say about that?
Well, President Biden has made clear that the United States has Israel's back. We do have a bond, a very close bond with Israel, to be able to do everything necessary to help protect them. At this point, however, I believe President Biden's made clear that we are going to obviously deploy our carrier fleet off of Israel. There's a possibility we may deploy another carrier fleet as well. The purpose of that is to basically provide support to Israel if they need it. We will provide weapons. We will provide, I'm sure, missiles and air defense systems to try to help them protect themselves. But I suspect at this point that the United States is going to avoid getting directly involved, but will do everything necessary to try to help Israel ultimately be able to defeat Hamas.
And when you look at Hamas, how much influence do you think from other entities is Hamas getting? Do you think they're getting help from Iran, possibly other entities, maybe such as Russia? When you look at this Hamas force, what is Israel up against?
Hamas is a brutal terrorist group. When we were attacked on 9/11 by Al-Qaeda, it was the same kind of brutal terrorism that did not care about the killing of innocent men, women, and children. And that's what's going on now with what Hamas did. And there's no question that groups like Hamas and Hezbollah and other terrorist groups receive some support from Iran. They get weapons, they get training, they get missiles. Iran, we know from the intelligence that we've gathered, without question provides support for terrorist groups in the region to try to destabilize the region. Whether or not they were directly involved here, I think still remains to be determined. But there is no question that these terrorist groups survived because they do get help from Iran and perhaps from other terrorist groups in the region. That's how they survive.
There's a lot of nervous people all throughout this country, myself and one of them, when we see this. And we've been, subjected to it every day, watching the horrific scenes coming out of Israel. I saw some of the raw video out of there, and some of the stories from some of the generals on the scene talking about decapitation, just horrific things. A lot of people are worried that we could be on the brink of the next world war here. What is the reality of that situation?
Well, from my own experience, war is hell. It really is. And in some ways, the year 2023 is the year from hell. Not only because of the challenges to our democracy, the inability to govern our democracy, the fact that we don't even have a speaker in the House of Representatives, and then add to that two wars, the war in Ukraine and now the war in Israel. So it is, without question, a very challenging moment for the world, really, for the world. And the issue is going to be whether or not the world is able to come together and try to ultimately determine some kind of resolution here, or whether, as a result of the war becoming much more deadly in the future, whether or not Hezbollah or other terrorist groups, Lebanon, decide to get involved and attack Israel, whether Iran decides to attack Israel, in which event there is no question that this war will then escalate. So is there a danger of escalation? Yes, there is. The hope is that ultimately, we've seen conflict in the Middle East for 75 years, going back to 1948.
Right.
The roots of this conflict were created then. And we've seen wars, we've seen uprisings, and we've seen efforts to try to find peace. But we are now caught in another war in the Middle East. And very frankly, nobody knows just exactly where we're headed.
And yet it was before 1940 there. Israel formed in the 40s there. The Ottoman Empire was there beforehand. And the UK divided it up as such that it is today.
That's right.
Do you think that is part of the issue here, because it was divided up the way that it was?
Well, there's no question that when these countries decided that they would create at the time two separate states, one for Israel and the Jewish people, and one for the Palestinians. Unfortunately, what happened was that Palestinians continued to live in the state of Israel. And there was an effort to try to see if we could develop a two-state solution where the Palestinians could have their own state within that area, and Israel, of course, would continue to be its own country as well.
Right.
Unfortunately, those efforts at peace never went very far. I was chief of staff to Bill Clinton when he sat down and tried to negotiate an approach that would provide for a separate state. Unfortunately, the Palestinians did not accept it at the last minute.
Interesting.
And so, ultimately, we're going to have to get there. We're going to have to get there. And I know we'll go through this war, and there'll be a lot of killing, and there'll be a lot of innocent lives that are lost. But ultimately, there is no other solution in that part of the world but to have a two-state solution that provides for a Palestinian state and that allows Israel to be its own country as well.
That's well put, and that's good insight. Looking back here at home and just being around offices or being around people that we work with, we have people with a background. Maybe they're Muslim, they're Palestinian with a background, or maybe they're Jewish and they're from Israel and they have family in Israel, and we're seeing this. It's become tension, and I remember this happened. About 5 or 6 years ago, when there was a skirmish over there that got to be pretty bad. This one obviously worse. But you see the tension in office buildings with people who are so passionate one way or the other. How much more of that do you think we're going to see? And what would your advice be for us as Americans here who there's going to be people with different opinions, and how do we deal with that here?
Yeah, I understand the tensions. I've seen them firsthand in going to that part of the world and in dealing with those issues in Washington. The problem here is very similar to what happened on 9/11. When there is a brutal surprise attack that takes place in which innocent people, children, women are raped, grandparents are taken, hostages are taken. It's very difficult to say that Israel should not do everything necessary to protect itself. And so I think there is a degree of unity in this country and elsewhere that we should support Israel in this effort. But at the same time, I guess my hope is that we also ought to look at where is this war going? What are the goals that Israel wants to achieve? Is it going to be able to achieve those goals? Because I'm reminded of a quote from Colin Powell. He talked about Iraq. That's said that in these kinds of wars, the Pottery Barn rule applies. If you break it, you own it. And I think Israel has to be very careful about how it moves and what exactly are the goals here that it wants to achieve. Because in the end, ultimately, we have got to find some way to have a resolution in which Palestinians and Israelis can live in the same part of the world.
Well said. Anything else I didn't ask that you feel is important that you'd like to add?
No, it's
great.
You talk about this forever.
I know. I could too. Thank you. So I did a lot of research, but yeah, I've been over the past.
You did all right.
Yeah. Thank you so much, sir. It's a pleasure.
Okay, good to talk to you.
You as well.